Welcome to Girl Choose Yourself, where we're trading self-doubt for self-trust and settling for soaring. I'm your host, Eimear, and together here we're building the confidence to create lives so deliciously bold that they scare us a little. In the best possible way, of course, because life's too damn precious and too short to stay cozy in our comfort zones. It is time to choose ourselves for life so damn fabulous and soulfully fulfilling that we have to keep pinching ourselves to check if we're dreaming. Let's do this. Welcome back to the podcast. Today I'm revisiting a topic that I first spoke about in a blog post about 2 years ago, and that is my alcohol-free journey, which I think has been one of the most profound ways in which I continue to choose myself, and which has brought me a lot of unexpected benefits. And it is a very unexpected journey. I would never have thought that I would have been somebody who would have chosen to end my relationship with alcohol. So I'm going to share today, why I stopped drinking, how that was for me in the first year, and really some reflections on some surprising things I've learned and noticed in the years since then. So really reflecting on my relationship with alcohol, I guess I began relatively early. I started drinking in my local pub, I guess, at the age of 15, which seems extraordinarily young considering I am a parent to 3 children, the youngest of which is 17, and I'd be horrified if she were drinking. But there you have it. It was very much the water that I swam in as a teen in Dublin, in Ireland, in the 80s. Pub culture was the norm. We weren't playing on our phones. We were meeting each other down in the pubs, and it was just a huge social space, and drinking was normal. And underage drinking was very normal. I guess I looked 18. It was easy enough to get served. And I don't think anyone ever enjoys their first beer, but I got used to it pretty quickly and was a beer drinker for a long time. And I think it was just a way then, any kind of challenging social situation, life just felt a little bit easier having alcohol in my corner, and having a glass in my hand just made things easier. It was easier to socialize. I felt it was like liquid courage, liquid confidence. It was a trusty sidekick, and I became very habituated to it and didn't see it as a problem at all for many, many years. And it wasn't. I guess it wasn't until it was. And that was a very slow, gradual realization. And I think for a while, when I realized I was thinking too much about when I would be drinking next, I began to have a number of strategies to kind of control how much I was drinking. And I was quite proud of them. I was quite proud at how they worked. It was, okay, I'll only drink on certain days. I won't drink on these particular days. I won't drink alone. And then I would be out and with friends who were also drinking. And I remember one time a very good friend of mine saying, "Oh, now I realize what you're doing. You seem really in control, and I'm wondering, like, I'm drinking with you and you're just not getting as drunk. You order non-alcoholic drinks when you go up to the bar to get your round." And I'm like, yeah. It was just these little strategies. I would say, I don't want to be drunk. I will drink, but I will moderate my drinking and punctuate it with non-alcoholic drinks so that I can make sure that I am in control for most of the night. And things like that worked for a while. But the bottom line was I was thinking about it a lot. It had moved from something that I could go out and have a drink and think nothing of it to spending quite an amount of time strategizing and thinking about how I was going to drink, how much. And obviously there were all of the issues that you have to think about if you do have more than a few drinks, like how am I getting home? Just life becomes riskier when you are not fully in control at whatever age, particularly if you're younger. But as you get older too, it's just you're not fully yourself, which is a really key thing. And I was looking at some of the research and the statistics around women and alcohol, and there's lots that I didn't know until I was having a little peruse of the research before recording this episode. And this data is just from the US, but it says, according to the National Institute on Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism, alcohol use disorder among US women increased by 83.7% between 2002 and 2013. That's a huge percentage. And just a little mention of that term, alcohol use disorder. I think that's relatively new. I think when I was beginning to question my relationship with alcohol, I had a very sort of all or nothing view about it. It was like you were either an alcoholic or you weren't. And if you weren't an alcoholic, you didn't need to stop drinking. There was just a couple of strategies you might use if you were a little bit worried about your drinking, or maybe dry January, or you could just have a couple of strategies, but you didn't have a problem unless you carried this label of alcoholic and you needed to go to AA and do a 12-step program or whatever. And I felt that it meant that you had some sort of, you were just a little bit unlucky genetically, and you just had this something or other in your chemistry or your biology that prevented you from having all the fun of alcohol without it causing you an awful lot of harm. And I thought, well, I don't know that. But now what the term that's being used is not alcoholic, although I think the AA still uses that, and maybe other organizations, but it is the degree to which I have a disordered relationship with drinking, and it's either mild, moderate, or severe. And I guess the severe category for alcohol use disorder was probably what I was thinking of as that's an alcoholic. But I think it's interesting to see now how it's looked at as more of a spectrum, and to what degree it is taking up time in your head, and it is impacting areas of your life in many different ways. And there's different criteria that they look at. But that's still a staggering number, 83.7%. And another thing that I didn't realize about alcohol in women was that our biology creates very unique vulnerabilities to alcohol. Because the average woman, we have a higher proportion of body fat and less body water than men of a similar size. And then alcohol is water soluble, not fat soluble, which means that the same amount of alcohol becomes more concentrated in a woman's bloodstream than a man's. So this means that say a 140-pound woman who drinks the same amount as a 140-pound man will have a higher blood alcohol concentration, sometimes by as much as 30%. So yeah, they can hold it better. Not that you want to be holding it well, but you know what I mean. It's just like, that used to be when I was young. That was a thing. Oh, wow, he can really hold his booze. It still probably is a bit for men, that can hold their alcohol, or even for women as well, who think, oh, I don't get drunk, I can hold my alcohol. It's just all bullshit. It's really bullshit. I think for me, the turning point was what led me to really question my relationship with alcohol it was really, well, first of all, my husband doesn't really drink at all. He had stopped drinking. And We had both liked to drink together, but he has asthma that would just became so much worse when he drank. And it got to the point that he said, forget it. There's very little enjoyment for me anymore in this. And so he stopped. So I was the sole drinker. And so I found myself on more occasions where I wanted to have a drink. He's not going to have a drink. And so I was drinking more by myself and then it becomes very obvious because you can't pick up the bottle and pour a glass for somebody else because they're not having any. So it's just me. And that I began to notice that. And then I was getting worried about when I would be out with people, I was noticing that I wanted to order more alcohol and maybe the table didn't. And then I was like, well, we just need to leave in my head. Like, when is this going to be over so I can go home and have like a nightcap or pour myself a glass in my own house? Because I didn't want to be the person who said, will we have another bottle? Because that was maybe happening a little bit too often. So the turning point for me was really noticing over time that it was just taking up way too much headspace. And I was having to control my relation. It was like a controlling relationship. I enjoy this in a way that is unhealthy for me. And like nothing else that I do or that I enjoy takes up this amount of effort in my head. And so it was kind of exhausting. And I finally went to my doctor, and a wonderful woman, and said, hey, I really like to drink and I find it difficult to control that relationship. And that was the beginning of a changed relationship with alcohol. And when I went there, I had absolutely no intention of stopping drinking. Like, that to me seemed like a terrible idea. There was no way, like getting divorced from drinking. I just had to find some sort of solution that would make me be able to drink, but not have to be thinking about it in this way all the time. Taking up too much of my life, really. And I had done a bit of research before I walked into that doctor's office, and I walked in wanting a prescription for a particular drug. And that drug is called Naltrexone. I had found out about this drug because I'd been doing lots of sort of Googling online and looking for I was in this mindset, like, I'm not a fucking alcoholic. And I had a very negative view of that. I was like, I'm not that, but I need something, some kind of help. And so I found this story of an English actress. It was a short YouTube video, I think. And she had gone to Hollywood and found herself, very stressful environment, and found herself relying more and more on alcohol and becoming completely addicted, and it really causing huge problems for her in her life. And she went to a 12-step program. I think it didn't work for her the first time. She had to go back. But great success story, sober, very grateful for her sobriety. And then she said she found out about this drug called Naltrexone. And Naltrexone was developed to treat some other condition. I don't know what that was. But what they found was, hey, it's also got this benefit that if you take naltrexone, your desire to drink goes down significantly. And she made this video talking about the drug, saying, oh my God, this would have been so helpful for me if I had known about this when I was really in trouble, because it took a lot for me to walk into an AA meeting or get that kind of help. And I didn't realize that there was anything available to me before that things got that bad. So when I was in my conversation with my doctor, my primary care physician, and we started talking about my drinking habit, etc., she suggested naltrexone before I had to ask for it. And I was like, oh, great. Actually, I have heard of that drug. So I left there with my prescription for naltrexone, and also, agreed to go to do some therapy as well. And it was amazing. It was life-changing, like night and day, my relationship with alcohol. Because what naltrexone does, and obviously you have to get it prescribed by a doctor, and the amount that you take, it depends on lots of things, whatever. But for me, it was one a day for a certain amount of time. And so I took it, and then I went out my first time drinking on naltrexone, and I had one drink, and then I ordered a second drink, and I was like, had maybe 2 sips of it, and I was going, I'm good. I don't want this. And never in my goddamn drinking life would I have walked away from a half drunk drink. I just wouldn't have. Like, I would have just necked it and said, I won't have a third, but there's no way I'm leaving half a second. But I did. I could just walk away. I mean, naltrexone is like the Ozempic for booze. It just turns off the switch. You're just, for me, you're just not interested. So I absolutely, loved it. And I just thought at that point, yeah, this is like a real healthy thing. I'm kind of like on a health kick. I'm just taking a break and reducing the amount of alcohol I have. And I think I was training for a marathon at the time, and I was just, okay, I've just needed to hit a reset or a recalibration switch on my relationship with alcohol, and then off I go. And that's what it felt like. And it was great for a while. And then I would maybe I was drinking a lot less. I never bought alcohol and brought it into the house. I was maybe going out every 2 weeks, maybe to dinner or, to see a band and go to a bar and have a few drinks. So I was just going out maybe every 2 weeks and drinking. And I had naltrexone to kind of cut me off naturally. And so the relationship felt like, oh, this kind of toxic relationship that I had has suddenly got super healthy and I don't have to think about it anymore. And I didn't. And then COVID came. And when COVID came, things kind of got a little bit ropier. So I wasn't going out anymore. So then the decision was after a while, okay, well, I'll add wine to the shopping list and we'll bring wine into the house. And then bit by bit, I realized that I was thinking about it more and more. What are the cues for drinking now? Because it's not going out. And nothing dramatic happened, but it started changing. And it became clear that I would have to go back on the earlier dosage of naltrexone if I was going to be able to control the drinking again. And it just became really, really difficult. And I realized, okay, naltrexone was great because it's taken me to a place where I can see myself in a different relationship with alcohol entirely. And that was great. But do I really want to be in any type of a relationship with a substance where I have to exercise this amount of control? And for what exactly? So I think I was about 50 at the time, a little bit older, 51, 52. And I thought, maybe I've had enough. Maybe I've had enough. And so I made the decision to I just can't be having this back and forth any longer. I think I'm just going to stop. I'm going to do this for me. I'm going to really choose myself. I can't be doing this anymore. I'm more than this. I'm more than this drink has, I need it. And I don't want to need anything that isn't a positive influence for me. And I began to really see that it's great to get help and everything. And I don't think I could have made the decision to completely stop. For me, I don't think I could have made that decision if I hadn't had that experience on naltrexone of having a huge reduction in the amount that I was consuming. So that was that decision really, I think it was March 28th, 2022 when I had my last drink and said, I'm just done. I'm done. And I'm sure I didn't have one drink. I'm sure I had about 3, maybe 4. Maybe I finished a bottle of wine. I don't actually remember now, but it doesn't matter. But it ended then. It ended then. And I really, again, I was just looking at some of the impact on my health that I hadn't really noticed, because you just notice the things like, well, first of all, you notice the amount on your wallet. If you're buying wine every week, it's expensive. And I was a wine drinker and sometimes G&T. The risks, I just wasn't really aware of it. And I think I'm seeing more of it in the media now, more highlighting the risk effects. But some things particular to women, I just had no idea. Liver damage develops more quickly and with less alcohol consumption in women. I had no idea. I had no idea about the link between breast cancer and alcohol. I thought alcohol, liver cirrhosis, what's it got to do with breast cancer? Even light drinking, which is considered like 3 to 6 drinks per week, increases your breast cancer risk by 15%. And I was never a light drinker. I was never a 3 to 6. But if you were I was probably more, well, maybe sometimes I was definitely a light drinker while I was on Naltrexone, less than light probably. But if you're a moderate drinker, like, which is, 7 to 14 drinks a week, that raises your risk of breast cancer by 30 to 50%. I had no idea. Another health concern for women is brain vulnerability. And brain imaging studies reveal that female drinkers show greater reductions in hippocampal volume, which is part of the brain, the hippocampus, which is crucial for memory, than their male counterparts with similar drinking histories. And this says this may explain why women experience alcohol-related cognitive decline more rapidly. I mean, holy crap. I just had no idea about this. I really thought that it was... I just didn't know. I didn't know. So that first year of not drinking, well, first of all, it feels horrible, the idea of going cold turkey. And one thing that I did do before I planned that date, and I planned it probably only 2 days or 3 days before, was I found an online app which is called Reframe to support me on the journey. And it really was incredibly helpful to me because it was a community-based app, and it was me sort of logging in and, sharing my story and my progress, and kind of seeing those days and people celebrating your first week and then your second week. But the first 6 weeks were shit. They were shit because all I was doing was, okay, that's a day. That's another day. This is a terrible idea. I don't want to not be drinking. Maybe I'll just do this for a little while. But it just kind of went on, and another day and another day. So the first 6 weeks was really hard. And then what really surprised me was that it got so much easier. And some of the most surprising things from that first year was, well, I went on vacation to Italy that summer and found myself as part of a tour where I think we were doing Mount Vesuvius and Pompeii, and then we stopped at a vineyard, and they're just bringing me wine, glass after glass of it, and it's leaving my table untouched. And I'm kind of going, I think that gave me a lot of confidence. I was going, listen, if I can sit in a vineyard and people keep bringing me wine and me kind of go, no thanks, no I'm good, And more and more, I just found myself in positions that kind of surprised me. People would ask, are you not having a drink? And I'm going, no. And I didn't explain it very much. I just said, no, I'm not drinking. I think at the time I was doing maybe I was doing a bit of running, or I was quite healthy. And so people thought, well, maybe it's a bit of a health kick. But I just felt like it was my story, my business, and I didn't over-explain myself. So I was around family, I was around friends, people who typically were used to seeing me drink, And, I was just ordering non-alcoholic things. I think I even ordered a pot of tea in a pub in Ireland, and nobody really noticed. I think my sister was kind of like, oh, somebody to drink a cup of tea with me late in the evening. And I love not having a hangover. And when I think about that data about the health things, I had no idea that I would be helping myself in those ways. I had no idea that I had been putting myself at so much risk before. For me, one of the big worries was, who am I really without alcohol? Will I be able to move around the world confidently? And I'm so used to having that glass in my hand. And will I feel a little bit less myself? I've had a drink in my hand since I was 15. And what's really surprised me is wow, actually, it's great. I don't think about it. I kind of liked when I'd go for health checks and they'd say, and how many units do you have? Because normally when I answer that question, I'd be shaving down the number to make me sound less of a drinker. And now I just kind of go, I don't drink. And they're like, oh, okay. The absence of a bad thing happening to me is all I guess I'm noticing in one way from a health perspective. I haven't had any adverse thing happen to me that alcohol would have been a contributing factor. And I'm a relatively healthy person from the point of view of taking exercise and looking after my well-being. I feel if I'd continued to drink the way I used to, I probably would have a lot more problems. A lot more problems would have potentially developed for me. And I'm grateful that I'm well. I'm grateful that I'm well. And one thing that I hadn't really been paying attention to was the anniversary of the day that I stopped drinking. And I had a friend say, oh, congratulations on your 3-year anniversary. And I was like, a very close friend. I don't talk to many people about not drinking. And she had remembered because she's amazing and she's that type of woman. And I was thinking, wow, yeah, it's been 3 years and it just feels normal. And here's the reality as well. I do think about drinking sometimes. I do sometimes think about drinking and say, look at this. I'm 3 years and I didn't even kind of notice it and I don't think about it. When will I have a drink again? Will I start drinking again when I'm 65? Will I have a drink when I'm 70? When I don't have any responsibilities really to anybody? Nobody's dependent on me? Will I kind of, in my golden years when I'm in that kind of maybe 10 years left kind of view, will I then open up the bottle of red wine and just sit back and say, well, I'm on the way out now anyway, so why don't I? And you know what the truth is? I don't know. I don't know. I think I answer that question sort of on a day-by-day basis. I think one thing that I do notice that's very clear to me after having 3 years without any alcohol is that I find it very difficult to imagine a situation when I would choose to have a drink. So I think, oh, if it was at the wedding of this person or that person, I'm like, no, actually, I find it very difficult to think of an occasion where I think I would feel that I needed to invite alcohol back into the party. And that's how I just take it as it comes, really. I don't see a reason. And there were so many reasons to stop, and I don't see any reason to start again. And sometimes that kind of annoys me because I'm looking for the get out sometimes, but not in, if I can explain it like this, that looking for a way to drink doesn't have a lot of energetic substance driving it. I am so in the habit of not drinking that I imagine, although I would remain vigilant, but I imagine that it would take a lot to decide to have a drink. Most of the times when I'd be making bad choices would be when I would have had a drink So I don't have that full cognitive capacity to make a good decision. But when you're not drinking, you're more likely to make a good decision when it comes to your own well-being and choose what serves you best. And here I am now as a 55-year-old woman, and I think you're anywhere between 40 and 55. There's other kind of considerations as you're entering perimenopause or menopause and alcohol. One of the things that I've learned is that as your estrogen levels decline during perimenopause or menopause, the body's ability to actually metabolize alcohol changes significantly. People talk a lot in menopause about like, oh my God, I just can't anymore because the hangovers are brutal. There's also research that's showing that even moderate alcohol consumption, say 1 to 2 drinks a day, increases the frequency of hot flashes by 33% and the severity by 24%. And if you're in that phase of life, all of that stuff is pretty debilitating. And the last thing you want is to have more or worse of it. And we all know, even from our younger years, how disruptive it is to our sleep. And I know as a 55-year-old woman, one of the biggest things that I've noticed in the menopausal years is the sleep disruption and how debilitating that is. And that's amplified with alcohol at that stage of life. I just had a DEXA scan recently looking at bone health, and that becomes a huge concern at this stage of life as well, because alcohol interferes with calcium absorption and vitamin D activation, which are both essential to bone maintenance. So, I mean, bloody hell. It just doesn't get a good rap. And one thing that I've noticed since I've given up as well is, I don't know whether it's like this, your focus you begin to see more of the alcohols. You begin to see more of the sort of alcohol-free movement just because you are now alcohol-free yourself. But I think the sober curious movement has just been such a significant cultural shift. I was looking at some of the data there, but the growth in the global non-alcoholic market is projected to reach $1.7 trillion by 2028. So you don't just have to order the Diet Coke. I must admit, I did order some of the options that were available when I first stopped drinking, and they're still in my fridge because I just couldn't be arsed, to tell you the truth. I just went for sparkling water and, herbal teas and stuff. But there's huge choice now. The sales increases are like non-alcoholic beer, wine, and spirit alternatives up 33% since 2019. So many options, even if you're just looking to reduce your consumption. And you can see as well, I have a 22-year-old son who's in college and about to go into graduate school, and he doesn't drink. He's just not interested. And there's lots of people his age group who are drinking, but there's a significant number who aren't. And it's just much more normalized, I think, culturally to be, sober, alcohol-free, not drinking. Whereas in my generation, it was like, when you were a certain age, it was like you either had to say you were on antibiotics or everybody thought you were pregnant if you weren't drinking. So the movement has really sort of changed, which I think can only be a good thing for younger folks who are coming up, and they have more of an opportunity to be developing a healthy relationship for alcohol if you are going to drink, where there's a lot of options and places to go where you can socialize and be with people and not be drinking. There's just so many dry events now. Like I see these like morning dance parties called daybreakers or alcohol-free festivals that are drawing thousands of people, and you're seeing a lot of high-profile celebrities as well who are coming out, who are really sharing about their alcohol-free and sober journeys, which also is helpful to people who are considering maybe a different relationship with alcohol. So I guess just to conclude, I think bringing it back into this theme of choosing myself, for me, it's been profoundly beneficial, and it was completely unexpected. Gosh, I can't emphasize this enough. I never, ever, ever would have imagined that I wouldn't stop drinking. Never. So if you're listening to this and you cannot even think about divorce, as I used to put it, it's like maybe we'll just have a brief separation, but divorce is unthinkable when it comes to alcohol. I thought that too. But if you get the right support, it really is possible. And it really is possible to have a life when you're not thinking about it. You're hardly thinking about it, or you're not thinking about it. You can be in all of the places that you were before and be okay and be making different choices that serve you. And there will be people who see you choosing yourself in that way. And I've had a number of people approach me curious about my decision and have seen them make that decision too, and share that it was, it was helpful for them to see somebody who maybe didn't seem like the most likely person to be taking the alcohol-free path, take it and it go really, really well. So if you are looking for some help and support, I would advise you just to go to your primary care physician. Maybe Naltrexone is for you. Join a sober, curious community. Spend time in places where alcohol is not being served. And the journey looks different for everybody. And if you find yourself that you give up for a while and you go back, that's not a failure. That's just a pathway. Comparing yourself to other people when you're struggling is unhelpful, and you really will be surprised at the doors that will open up to you if you go and maybe just ask for a little bit of help if it feels like that's something that you need. So I hope this has been of help and service and interest to you. If you want to reach out with any comments or thoughts that you'd like to share, you can find me on Instagram at Eimear Zone Coach, and share your thoughts on this episode. I'd love to hear those. And until the next time, thank you so much for choosing to spend this time with me today. If you enjoy the episode and it resonated with you, please consider subscribing and share this podcast with someone you know who would benefit from the message. If you'd like to take things a step further, you'll find some free and paid resources in the show notes. And until next time, in the unlikely event that no one has told you this yet today, let me have the profound honor of reminding you that you are truly magnificent and the world is a far better and brighter place because you are here with us all. See you next time.